you've got to start with building savings, not investing. People call their 401k a savings plan. It's an investment plan.
Yeah.
Savings is available, liquid, safe. It probably isn't earning much money. Don't worry about earning the money. Have that there so you have peace of mind. As soon as you have a little bit of money there, now you can go, and here's the velocity for you. You can go change your deductibles on your car and your home, or your elimination period on your disability policy, or, you can start to drop coverages because you've got the ability to handle the small things, which can save you a bunch of money.
I have about $1.4 million in an IRA.
Boom. That's good.
$100,000 in a Roth IRA.
Nice.
Doing a great job of saving money. And I've been making contributions to my company's 401k for the last year.
Okay.
He's 56, married with an 8-year-old daughter, and he has 27 years left on his mortgage, which is about $1,500 a month. I only have 3 years before I lose the 10% IRA withdrawal penalty. What should I do with my IRA and 401k? Stop making 401k payments, roll the money into an investment, pay off the house. Let's collaborate. Let's give them some ideas. Let's talk about this.
I'll talk about it philosophically. Then we're going to bring in Tim the Ninja to show this from an actual, calculation so people can kind of see this. But philosophically, $1,500 a month, it's going to be hard to invest in a 401k for the next few years from 56 to age 60, no matter how much you put in, and create $1,500 a month from that investment.
Yeah.
Right? That's going to be really difficult. That's $18,000 a year. That might take $500,000 in today's interest rate environments for retirees. I guess at $1,500 a month in payment on a mortgage, even if it's obviously was a 30-year mortgage, it's down to 27 years.
Yeah.
So maybe refinance 3 years ago, you get a better interest rate. That's not a very high balance. For $1,500 a month, what would you guess? Like $250,000?
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
So let's say it's $250,000. Okay, so $250,000, that's half the amount to free up $1,500 a month than if he invests it in today's interest rate environments. Plus, the stock market is overvalued. We're seeing a massive run up for quite a while, and now it's starting to become really volatile. So there's a pretty short period of time. That's a lot of risk on your money to potentially create cash flow. So on a 401k, what is it, about $19,000 a year you could put into that?
That's pretty much the maximum. Yep. And so that's one of the things we don't know is how much he's contributed. So he said he contributed for 1 year, and should I keep contributing? And so we just have to kind of guess on how much he's contributing. Maximum would be about $19,000 he could put in per year.
Right.
And as you mentioned too, even in today's interest rate environments, I would guess it'd take way more than $500,000.
Right. Well, let me just throw a couple ideas out, and then we'll have you prove it out.
Perfect.
What if he saved that $19,000 a year for the next 4 years? That's close to $80,000, just short, right? Maybe with some interest, it could be that. And cash out the Roth IRA in 4 years with no penalty. That might be enough to pay off the house or come close.
Yes.
That would free up $1,500 a month. But here's the important word, guaranteed. A word that you can't really use in finance.
No.
So A, you've got the peace of mind of having the mortgage paid off. B, you don't have the market volatility, which he has $1.4 million already subject to whatever happens in the market. So even from an asset allocation decision here, an asset allocation is maybe there's stocks, maybe there's bonds. Now we're saying let's move it to the most guaranteed column, which is paying off a loan. What would that feel like from a peace of mind standpoint? And, we already know what it would free up. So let's take a look at the overall 401k structure here.
Yeah. So
I'm excited about this.
I'm going to pretend like he already is putting in $10,000 a year. I don't know what he's putting in. So
we're just getting at least something to look at.
Yep. And so at 56, he has $10,000 already existing in the 401k.
All right. So Tim, $10,000 a year, let's say for 4 years.
Yeah.
Right. So 40 grand going into this. And then he's at an age where he could definitely take the money out without penalty.
Yes.
As long as the rule doesn't change, which it looks okay right now.
Exactly. And then I gave him credit for the first $10,000 because he said he'd been investing it for a year already.
Okay.
So we have $50,000 total going in. I am projecting this out to age 70 to see what will happen by age 70. So if he's got a 6% earnings rate every single year from 56 to 70 with no losses, he put $50,000 in, he's going to have $111,991.
Okay. So just a little bit more than double.
Yep. Now, the biggest reason to do it, right? The employer match. That's the reason that we get told to do this.
Free money.
Free
money.
Right?
Get 100% return on
doesn't
that
want
dollar.
that?
So
Or 50% return if you get 50 cents on the dollar.
Yep.
This is kind of the terminology we hear.
Exactly. So now we have to put the employee match in. Most common match is 50% up to 6% of your contribution. So for him, that would cap it at about a $3,000 contribution.
And he didn't say whether he was getting this or not, but it's important for everybody to understand.
Exactly, right? This is one of the big reasons to do it. You'll see what happens now is he gets an extra $16,000 put into the model by the employer. And so you'll see the rate of return has gone from 6 to 6.85.
So not even a full percent.
Not even a full percent.
Not even a full percent.
Yep. People think it's going to have this huge impact on them. It doesn't have nearly as big of an impact. And the higher the balance of the 401k, the worse the impact is.
Because it's the existing money, which he has a really high balance, $1.4 million for a 401k. So the new deposits don't make as much difference.
Oh.
Yep.
That's tricky.
So
And he's older, not old, older.
Yep.
56. So there's not as much time for growth. We're looking to age 70 to give it some room, because in 4 years, it's not going to do much.
Yeah, if we will go back, and I can do that right now, I can say, well, let's just say we're going to go out to that same 60-year period, right?
Yes, age 60.
To age 60 for him. Then the rate of return goes way up, 9.08, because those payments had a bigger impact in the short period of term.
Because it was the match during those 4 years versus the other 10 years not having a match.
Exactly, but instead of having $125,000, he's going to have $69,000.
Right, so he put in 50.
Put in 50.
They put in
$12,000. And he earned $7,700.
$7,700. So this is a big thing. The older you are, the less effective those dollars are, because they don't have time to grow.
Exactly. Yep. So if we're going back to 70 to kind of see what this thing will do over time, we can go back to 60 whenever we want to. But the other thing that they always tell us is your tax deferral is a big deal.
Right.
And I want to calculate the tax deferral as a return for you. But in reality, if you think about tax deferral, it's kind of a misleading thing, because you're going to pay it sometime. So to show it as a return is basically saying you didn't have to, because you put this money in your 401k, you didn't have to pay tax on that income.
Right.
And people wouldn't have paid tax on that income from their 401k. They would have paid it out of their pocket from somewhere else. So I'm going to bring in a tax deferral. I figure if this gentleman has done a great job of saving the money he saved, that he's earning at least $150,000 a year, probably better to be at $1.4 million in an IRA and $100,000 in a Roth, that kind of stuff. But that'll put him at a 22% tax bracket at this point. Now, when I bring in the taxes deferral, it's going to show that his rate of return is turned on. Sorry, already jumped up, right? Because he got the benefit of this tax deferral. So what it shows now down here at the bottom is he didn't actually pay on this. Oh, that's the problem right there. We want to turn the tax cost off for a minute. So tax deferral shows that he goes from a 6.85% rate of return to an 8.78% rate of return. Now, it didn't change these numbers here, though. He still has $125,000 in account value, because all it's showing is if you had not got tax deferral, you would have had to pay the tax. The tax would have come from somewhere. So since you didn't have to pay the tax, it makes it look like the fund earned 8.78%. You would have had to have done 8.78% in a taxed account to equal what you have here.
Got it.
Okay. Now, we've got the rosy picture painted. We haven't put in what else he's got in a 401k. Management fees, right?
Yep.
401k management fees can be extremely high. They're saying the average fees, depending on the size of the firm and the size of the account, are going to range right now. TD Ameritrade and some others that are pretty favorable say between 0.5% to 2%. Some other studies show them as high as 2.79% as the average fee, right? So I don't want to go to the high end. I just took the 0.5 and the 2 and hit the middle at 1.25. Okay. So if we turn on that, his rate of return drops back down to 7.43.
Just because of the fees.
Just because of the fee, right?
Right.
So now instead of 125,000, he's going to have 105.
Right. So 20 grand gone.
The 401k
just
company,
like that.
Yeah. Yep. And they took 13,000 in fees, but he lost $20,000
because those fees would have earned interest.
Exactly.
So that's called opportunity cost.
Yep.
Right.
Now the next
This
thing
is so disturbing. This pie chart is the most disturbing pie chart I've seen in a long time.
The next thing we haven't done now is he kicked the tax can down the road. Now he's got to pay tax.
On top of all of this.
When he goes to take it out.
Okay.
If I turn on tax cost, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to take it out in a lump sum. And most people aren't going to take it in a lump sum, but you'll see if I do it in a lump sum, his return drops to 5.36%, so less than the 6%.
Because he'll pay a higher tax rate because it's a big sum of money.
And yeah, here it may not be that much of a tax rate boost because he had $125,000 total balance, allegedly, and he was earning $150 before in this model.
Right.
So he may not have really gone up in the tax rate, right? But he could have. So I can show it coming out over time because that makes the lump sum income tax $24,000 if I do it in a lump sum.
Just on the 125.
On the 125.
Okay.
Right? If I say instead, okay, let's
take it out over time.
Spread this out. Then I can say, okay, let's pick an age for him. We can pick a 10-year age. I don't know where we want to start. He mentioned the withdrawal thing at 60. So let's say he starts at 60 and he wants to, over 15 years, turn it to zero, right? So I can show a smaller amount. That's what I've done here. From 60 to age 76, I show that he took out an equal amount of $7,195 a year. That's what would turn it to zero. That brought the tax burden down from $24,000 to $17,000. So it brought the return back up to 6.28.
Okay.
So that 50% match from the employer really at the end gave him a 0.28% boost, and that's it over what he would have got without it.
Right. And that's because of fees and taxes.
Fees and taxes.
And we haven't accounted for volatility, which they can watch another video we did on the impact of volatility.
Yes, because if he has a single loss year in this model, the numbers will be drastically different, not in his favor.
Right, because he's only looking till age 60.
Time. Yep.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, and we can change the numbers and stuff, but this is exactly what the model will do this over and over again. It always ends up this way.
So how hard is it to go to a $3,000 contribution with a $3,000 match?
Okay.
I just want to take a look at what that does because that's the 100% return myth.
Okay.
Oh, I'm getting 100% return. Maybe in your first year.
And that's the thing too, is you really don't ever get 100% return in most 401ks now because they do a 50% match up to 6. So you'd have to put in 6 to get 3,000.
Right.
In most models.
But if you happen to have one of those where it's like we match 100% on 3%, which is what I had when I was 19 years old.
Yeah, that was
common. I took advantage of that back then. And I don't like that I'm aging. It's messed up. But $3,000 going in, $3,000 being matched. We look at that over the same period of time. I just want to see the impact.
So if we've got the person, like you mentioned, $3,000 are getting a full 100% match at $3,000. They're going to put in $22,000 in total contributions. The net employer match will be at $37,000 because that's going to show the money that the employer put in plus the growth on that over time. So he put in $22,000 of his own money. He gained $37,000 on the employer match and the interest on the employer match, and I have it still showing until age 70. And then he earned another $37,000 on his own money.
Right.
So he has
his money plus the interest.
Total account balance is $76,000. So we see with the match, he went from a 6% rate of return to a 9.18 because that was the 100%.
Not 100%.
Nope.
Not 100% return, going from 6% to 9%.
Yep.
Right? Because now there's money in there already earning interest. They would have to match all the previous dollars to keep it at 100%, which is impossible.
Yep.
Because it would just be an exponential amount of money.
And to show that better, if I take out the present value and say he's starting on day one, so he doesn't have any current money in there, you'll see it makes the return go up to 11.54, right? But that's because now he's getting the 100% match on the 100 the whole time. He still didn't get a 100% match. That would have put him at a full 12%.
Right, because the second year, there's now his money in there and their money earning interest, but when he puts a new deposit, they're only matching that. They're not matching the previous dollars that are in the plan.
That's so tricky.
This free money has a lot of conditions. A vesting period of how long you have to go before you actually get access to that money. He's probably at that because he's got so much money in there.
Yep.
But someone just starting out. 2, when do you get the money? When you actually take it out. So if the market goes down, that could actually decimate some of that so-called free money. But here's the bigger issue. What if someone isn't as responsible as him, isn't as far along as him, and now they're trying to get the match, but they don't have enough savings? What if they're trying to get the match, but they have a 22% interest rate credit card? What if they're trying to get the match at the expense of investing in their own skill sets or doing the things they want to do, or they've got the so-called golden handcuffs, so they're working somewhere they don't want to work simply because of the match? How many people say, I don't like what I do, but it provides good benefits? Well, if you don't like what you do, you're going to diminish who you are in this world. You're going to get tired over time. You're going to be begging for retirement and find out that even this person with $1.4 million in a 401k, $100,000 in a Roth IRA, if we take that and keep it safe in retirement and earn an interest rate on it, the amount of income coming off of that, what do you think, Tim?
It's pretty alarming.
$40,000, $50,000 a year, which
lucky.
is a lot less than what he was used to or earning. So a millionaire on paper and a pauper in life.
Yeah.
So here's someone who did all the right things, everything that they were told to do. And the question is still, what kind of lifestyle will that provide?
Yeah. that's the alarming thing for most of these retirees. I mean, he's done an excellent job. He is so far ahead of most Americans in his savings, right? So far ahead. And yet, in order for him to have anywhere close to what he's earning now, he would have to have a 10% return on that money or better. And you're not going to do that safely.
Yep. So the first problem is 4 years period of time doesn't get you very far because the earnings we're looking all the way out to age 70 before you really see this gain. $22,000 in, $37,000 total on the $22,000 that you put in. If they put a match, there's another $37,000 on top of that. So of your $22,000, you end up with around, $70,000 over the next 15 years. Well, $70,000, if you take interest off of $70,000, even if it's 10%, that's $7,000 a year, almost 15 years from now.
Yep.
It's not moving the needle far enough. So
not at all.
At this age, it really comes down to, I don't know if I would make contributions, especially not above a match, right?
Yeah.
And it might make more sense to free up $1,500 a month by paying off a mortgage, depending on what the mortgage is. We just have to compare cash flow. The two best tools I know to do that is, number one, the cash flow index.
Yes.
So you take your loan balance, divide it by the minimum monthly payment, and it spits out a number. If that number's low, 50 or less, you've got a cash hog on your hands. It's requiring a lot of your monthly cash flow to service that loan. If it's above 100, it's fairly efficient. But what I want people to look at is their investment index. How much money did you deposit of your own cash into the investment, and how much cash flow can that create? You divide that cash flow by the deposit, and it tells your investment index. If your investment index is higher than your cash flow index, you want to pay off the loan. If your investment index is lower than your cash flow index, you want to stay invested. Now, you could probably explain that really well.
Yeah, it's like the example you brought up at the very beginning. If he could take the same amount of savings for the 401k over the next 4 or 5 years, put that in a savings account, use that in the Roth, and it frees up $1,500 a month. We're talking about, like you mentioned, a total investment. We were talking about $19,000 over that 4 years. So you would have put it away $76,000, $80,000, and you would have taken the Roth, used that to pay off the house. Then you've created $18,000 a month. So the math on that would be $180,000 divided by $18,000. That's a 10% rate of return.
Right, from a cash flow standpoint.
From a cash flow standpoint. If instead he puts the $180,000 in the market or somewhere and tries to draw interest off of it, is it going to create the same $1,500 a month?
Well, we've got volatility. So if the market goes down and you still try to take $1,500 a month, it starts to eat away at your principal during those down years.
It compounds it.
And it compounds it. It's called disinvesting. Investing is on the way up. Disinvesting is it starts to kill the account just as rapidly on that compounding cost. And so this is why we saw, even years ago when the market was really good, Peter Lynch was talking about the problem of disinvesting. And I remember him saying, if you're trying to take more than 4% out of the stock market during your retirement years, you risk your principal. Or we saw the Trinity studies from Trinity University saying, if you take more than 4%, you risk your principal. And that was during a time where the stock market yielded more than it does today.
Yep.
So, that's why people are moving to fixed accounts. And with the Fed continuing to cut rates, it's cutting the income for retirees and making it more affordable for businesses to borrow, but not so good for people that are trying to earn an income by lending money through bonds, whether that's corporate or government bonds, or fixed income instruments, which create a cash flow that's predictable. That predictability has lowered things substantially. So if we look at fixed annuities, those are so astronomically low on the interest rates that it's not kicking off much cash flow. Now, if we go to the stock market and you're in retirement, you run the risk of ruining everything that you built to that point. It's heavily concerning.
It is. It's very concerning. And so, where he's got a opportunity to create a guaranteed $1,500 a month, the 401k would never produce that for him on its own.
All right. So there's the answer. Should you fund a 401k? Well, it depends on your age. Have you built up enough cash flow? Have you built up your cash reserves? Have you paid off your higher interest rates? Use the cash flow index, loan balance divided by monthly payment, and the investment index, the amount of investment that you put into it, your capital, not what it's worth, but what you put into it, divided by the cash flow. For most people, 401ks are zero. They're not providing cash flow, and this is the problem. We're being trained to accumulate, when the reality is we've got to be trained to create cash flow, because that's how we can actually live off things without destroying the principal.
Our first question comes in from Roxy. She says, right now my employer does a 401k match to a certain percentage, and she's currently putting in more than what her employer is matching. She goes, I know that this is not the best retirement after reading your book, What Would the Rockefellers Do? So her question is, should I continue to take advantage of that employer match, but back down my contribution to the lowest amount needed? Or should I maximize my employer match? What's the best move for her?
All right, I'll let you talk about the technical pieces. I'll give the initial piece to Roxy.
And
here.
We're going to philosophically be in the same place. Anyway.
So here's the thing. The first thing I want someone to consider is, do they have 6 months set aside for overall savings and liquidity? Because if you don't, you're one financial surprise away from having to go into double-digit interest rate, credit card debt. Plus, there's peace of mind by having that. Number 2, I would want to know, is there any double-digit interest rates right now? Because just being able to pay off loans might be a better, more secure return, even though there's this myth that if you're getting a match, that's 100% return. So I'm going to have Ryan dispel that that's not 100% return.
True.
And number 2, people say it's free money, but a lot of times it's not free money because there's strings attached. So the first question I have is, when do you get access to that money? Is it immediately vested, or is it something you have to be in that job for 4 or 5 years before it's fully yours? If you take it out now, you got a 10% penalty. Where is it invested inside of there? How's that performing? What are the fees against it? And when do you actually get to use or benefit from the money? Because I don't think money's that valuable until you can utilize it. So with those things in mind, how do you feel about her going up until the point she gets a match or more?
So I would go back to what you said, Garrett. First, it's like, well, if you got fired tomorrow, do you have enough savings to actually cover some of your bills and have kind of all that built up? Because that should be your first step.
Right. And we should acknowledge, Roxy, that she is investing money. She is. And I want to make sure that's clear. It's investing. It's not saving. Yeah. Saving is moving money into places that are available. They're liquid. They're safe. Sure, it might not beat inflation. It might be earning a lower interest rate, but you know it's going to be there tomorrow.
Yep.
When we put money into retirement plans, a lot of people call that a savings plan, where it's more of an investment vehicle, and the investments are whatever fuels that vehicle, which are typically mutual funds.
So one of the things that's my favorite that both you and I say is deliberately save or automatically save, deliberately invest.
Right.
Like, it's like, look, choosing where you invest your money, have you even gotten to the point where you should be?
Right. So the questions that Roxy should really investigate is, number 1, what are the overall fees associated with this?
Correct.
Right. So what are the funds that she's investing in compared to an index fund? Is there a lot more fee inside of that? What's the performance been? Any protection on the downside if the money goes down? Right? Mm-hmm. Are there other outside things that are creating drag, like high interest rate credit cards, or stress, like not having enough savings? Or is there a way she could even invest into herself to expand her skill set and increase her overall income? So these are some of the considerations. So number 1, I'm glad she's investing. I think that, if you read my books and you start feeling bad for doing fairly good things, that's not my intention, Yep. And then the second thing is, okay, I love the question. It's, should I continue?
Totally. So I always talk to clients. First of all, I'm like, look, good job. You're ahead of most people if you're spending less than you make.
Right.
Now we can go into that debate of, well, where should I put that money?
Right.
Should it be a savings account or invest or what?
When I was 19 years old, I started a 401k. I was working at this place, Guardian, selling life insurance and mutual funds, and they matched 3%. So I put in 3%, took my 3% match, and I chose to stop doing it. Number 1. Number 2, when I stopped working there in 2005, I cashed it out and actually took the 10% penalty. I had just buying a home, so I put in a lawn. And then when everybody complained about their 401k not growing, I'm like, mine's growing all the damn time. I got to cut it all. So it's a bad joke, but that was kind of the thing. And for me, it was more, that was something I had no control over. That if taxes went up in the future, I was planning on making more money in the future, and I thought the government was pretty deep in debt and there's going to be an issue in the future. So I'm like, I don't want to just wait in the future, because I found my grandma didn't want to pull her money out at 70.5 when you're forced to, otherwise you have a required minimum distribution penalty. Yep. And I'm like, well, if we put money into a plan that's easy to get in but hard to get out, then maybe reconsider. So I would say invest in yourself, build up your savings, and determine, are these mutual funds the best place you can invest your money? And if they're not, I don't really care what that match is, because it's incentivizing maybe not the highest and best use of your cash.
Well, and maybe, and by maybe I mean yes, there are companies spending billions of dollars on advertising to make sure you automatically put your money into your 401ks, your IRAs. Just think of these large financial companies.
Isn't it true that a lot of people have to opt out now instead of opting into their plans?
Yes.
You're automatically enrolled.
Yeah.
And then you have to opt out because it's just going to come out of your paycheck.
Right. So that's something people need to pay attention to as they're graduating college and stepping into the working world. Like, is it something that is automatically being invested for them, or have they made the decision to actually do that?
And one of the things I would do for people is like, look at the past. Has putting money into 401ks worked for those who are retiring right now? Because the answer is no, financially. Like, almost everyone is retiring, not retiring. They're either retiring with not enough money and figuring it out, or they're not retiring and working at the 7-Eleven to figure out that extra.
That's a huge issue you're bringing up, is that we have this false sense of, hey, I'm doing the right things, but then you get there, and the U.S. Department of Labor said 95% of people are not economically independent when they're 65, meaning if they stop working, they don't have enough income to just sustain the same level of lifestyle.
Yeah, to even cover the bills.
Right.
And it's like, and yeah, you got Social Security, but it's like, okay, are you going to move from somewhere that costs $4,000 a month to somewhere that costs $1,000?
Right.
And how's that going to work for you mentally? And
the match isn't the worst thing. It's good.
No.
Right. When is it vested where it's now yours? How old are you and how long before you can spend this money? What are the other fees and things that are a potential problem? Have you created economic independence? This is the big question. Yep. Are you investing to create cash flow? Because if you can invest and create cash flow, and that cash flow from assets can start to cover some or all of your expenses, you start to get this amazing advantage. Because most people, they're scrimping and saving, and like, okay, I'll take my own situation when I was funding my 401k, and I was newly married. My wife was so lucky because we were saving over 50% of our income because I was a miser.
Boy, oh boy.
Yeah. I know it's shocking to those that didn't know me then, but you knew me then. And I was a miser.
I did know this guy at this point.
Like, I was just, what could we do to save? She was like, you should buy new clothes. I'm like, nah. Like, I meant buy a suit for work, but I wasn't buying new. Like, it was all about,
you weren't buying your
saving.
Lululemon.
And I'm saving so much money, but I'm not getting economically independent.
Yep.
Because I'm putting money into something that isn't creating cash flow. So now that I'm economically independent, I don't have to worry about what percentage of my income I'm saving. I'm saving more. I have more cash flow coming in than I need to live on. That means 100% of the active income I earn. If I get paid to go speak, if I do a consulting gig, if I create intellectual property for, your company, then that's all money I can reinvest because it's not encumbered into my personal lifestyle. And I think that's a paradigm shift where we're looking at, is this a good or bad product? Well, it depends. Who are you? What are your options? If you're going to go through life and say, I'm too busy to address my finances, that match is probably a decent situation over just blowing the money and not having anything to show for it. But if you're really looking for, you want economic independence, you want to take responsibility for your finances, which it sounds like Roxy does, then I would really look at building that liquidity, investing in yourself, finding ways that you can invest in things that you know about, you have a little bit more control over, and go for cash flow.
Yeah, I agree completely. And what people sometimes don't understand is like the drag on their match.
Right.
It's like, well, okay, I put 3% in, they match me 3%. It's like, well, do you know what the cost is on the mutual funds you have in there? Is there an investment advisor charging another 1% on top of the 1% you're probably already paying? What are the fees for the plan? And, oh, by the way, what about access to the money? Because to me, that's almost the most important thing.
Well, I'm just curious, if there's all of these fees that you're talking about, how does someone go about determining if they're being charged 3% plus an additional 1% plus another additional 1%? It feels like you could read the contract and still be a bit confused about it. So if someone's starting out, how do they decipher?
So this 100% will be a future episode that we do. But the easiest thing on mutual funds is go to Yahoo Finance or Bloomberg or something and put in your ticker symbol and just look for something called an expense ratio. And it's like, this is one of your fees, not all of them.
There could be 12B1 fees. So the second way to do it, because we won't answer the whole question here, but this is an eye-opening for people. You get a calculator and you put in the calculator how much you've contributed and what the actual net increase was on the statement, and you're going to see it's different than what they tell you your percentage was, because they're telling you the average percentage or they're telling you the gross percentage, not accounting for fees and volatility. And that's a simple way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
that's good advice.
so the way I describe this is the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
So if you do what Garrett's talking about, you can work backwards, and maybe that's your fees, maybe it's not your fees, but it's all of them accumulated. Like it's the numbers don't lie. What's my rate of return?
Yeah.
All right, you got any more questions in
Well,
here?
I'm just curious. I'm thinking from Roxy's perspective here. As she is transitioning, she knows that she is not necessarily wanting to invest more money in her 401k, or maybe she's deciding I'm just going to not overfund it. But what does she do in the transition period? Does she just cut cold turkey and say, I'm no longer putting money in my 401k? Or is there some other advice you can give her as she's navigating what she wants to do in the future, and if she's going to cash out of her 401k?
So for me, part of that depends on the person. Forced savings are actually a good thing for certain people. They really are. So if you're planning to transition to being an entrepreneur, which Garrett, you've obviously done at some point, and if that's like your end game, well, it's not the worst thing in the world to like get a match for a couple of years, but don't go above it, and then save your cash. And then after that, well, it's maybe you're going to put in a lawn at your new house.
So here's the two here's the
Or
two
move
things.
to Hawaii. That's what I did. I cashed mine out and moved to Oahu.
So two things that I would recommend here.
Yeah.
Number one is if you're at a small enough firm, go to your employer and say, you know what, I'm trying to build up 6 months of liquidity, or I want to pay off my student loans. If there's another place, would you match that if I stop contributing to the 401k? And for that employer, if they're willing to talk directly to the employee, get the same tax benefit. It's the same tax benefit, whether they pay them or whether they put it into the plan. So it's not, and I actually did a Forbes article back in the day on this firm that was creating this automated system that employers could match paying down student loans, which was really cool. So there's that consideration, just to look there. And then number two is we're going to have Ryan pull out a computer in episodes and show how the match doesn't give 100% return.
Yep.
See, it would have to match all the dollars in the plan all the time, every year, not just the new deposits. So imagine I have $100,000 in the account. I put an extra $3,000 in the next year. They match $3,000. If I put that in a money market, okay, that's increases $6,000 in that account. The reality was that's only a 3% improvement to the $100,000 on what they matched, even though it doubled what I put in. It would be no different than getting 3% on that account, right?
Okay.
But everybody's looking at, well, it's 100. That's free money. That's 100% return, and it gets into something for nothing. We don't think about it. We just automatically do it. And I like to do the analysis. And look, I'm not as much a numbers guy as most people think. I'm a conceptual guy. I think conceptually how it works, and then I validate or invalidate the concept based upon what the numbers tell me.
Based on the math.
Most
right?
people look at numbers without any accuracy because we can't project 30 years from now. Who the hell knows? And yet people make decisions on that. I like to kind of reverse engineer and see what happens when I make a deposit and this happens. How much does it really go up? Might go up 2-3%. It doesn't go up 100% like the memes and the cliches and the conversation happens.
So one of the scary things for me when I'm just advising people on their money is when they're making their decisions based on rate of return. It's like, wait, is that the only thing you're thinking about? Because that sounds like 100% rate of return, right? I put these dollars in and then I get these other dollars that are not mine. And it's like, do you really actually think that's all that's going on in that big picture? Because it's not true.
Right, because we're talking about restrictions, when it's vested, what else is happening in your life, incentivizing you to do something like that. Kind of like people go, oh, I got to get a mortgage because I get a tax deduction. Well, I don't know if that's the best decision because do you really want a home? Do you want all the maintenance that comes with the home? And is the home going to cash flow? And I think that's one of the major considerations we're talking about here today with Roxy is how do you create more cash flow? And if you can learn to create more cash flow, you're going to be in a superior position than accumulation and waiting and hoping in 30 years it's going to work out and telling everybody that you're going to get free money.
What's a good alternative for 401ks for employees?
Yeah, so we actually... I remember years ago, I got brought in and brought two guys from the team 2 different times to these organizations. And they were organizations that didn't want to offer 401ks. And so here's what was cool. We did cash flow optimization for the employees. And one of them wanted to have this lake home, but was going to wait 5 to 7 years into retirement. We were able to get that for them immediately. That became the plan. I'm like, why wait 7 years? You get to enjoy it along the way. And there's a little bit of leverage, because here's the thought process. This was someone that was 5 to 7 years away from retiring. New deposits into a 401k when you're 5 years out from retirement don't have much time to grow. Mm-hmm. But the thought was, what if this real estate even appreciated 3% a year? It's 3% of a much bigger amount. And so the 401k for 5 years compared to that for 5 years couldn't even compete. So that person went to be an advocate. There was another person that was a chief learning officer. We freed up $750 a month in restructuring loans through cash flow optimization. Now, the thing about a 401k when you're an employer offering something to an employee, the good news is a lot of them may not want to go and do this for themselves, and so it gets them to save something. But sometimes it gets them to save money at the expense of paying off high interest rate loans. Sometimes it gets them to save money before they built up their own personal liquidity. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it gives them a false sense of security that they're going to have some retirement, but the amount of money that are in these plans are not near enough to actually get people to retire. So I have a first question for most of the population right now. Why do we want to retire? Retirement came from an industrial age where people were in assembly lines, where they were working 7 days a week, where we had worker deaths, where it required unions to come in to save their lives, which those got pretty inefficient over time, but I understood why they started. And so, look, if you're in a job that you hate, maybe the new definition of retirement is, what if you found something you enjoyed? I get that it's work. I get it's not easy to find that. And it might even take going back to some level of education, which might not require like education with a college, but a skill set that you can develop so you could bring that to the world. Because I found that by really investigating like what I wanted in life, I got to a point in 2005 where I'd created a very nice income and lifestyle. But to make the transition to what I really want to do, I had to give up recurring revenue and renewals and walk away from that, which was hard because we were kind of at a place that was like, cool. And now I'm like, okay, now we're starting over to create economic independence, but I want to choose a path that I'm excited about, something I don't want to retire from. So that's one question. The second thing is with the 401k, I get it, that automation's really nice, but is it really helpful? Mm-hmm. This notion of golden handcuffs, I don't believe in golden handcuffs. Do you want someone stuck there because of the benefits, even though they don't want to be there? There's a 60% disengagement for American employees right now. Yeah, 60% are disengaged in their work. That's golden handcuff type of philosophy.
Yeah, and then we're talking about, there's vesting periods for these retirement accounts that, you get a vesting schedule of 3 to 5 years so you can take part of the match, that sort of thing too. So you're talking about a pretty significant amount of time that you have some of these employees that are still with you, right?
Yeah. Years ago, I wrote an article for Forbes. And in that article, it wasn't my content. I interviewed someone because they had developed a program for organizations to match paying down a student loan. So if someone put 3% of their income towards a student loan, the employer could match the 3% just like they might a 401k. And I feel like paying off a student loan right now is so much more valuable to the psyche than trying to fund a retirement plan. And look, that might be heresy from a financial person.
Well, I don't think so. So, my girlfriend right now is looking at all of her student loans, and the interest rate for those student loans are more than a car is, more than a mortgage is.
What kind of interest rate are we talking about?
Right now, about 6 to 7%.
6 to 7%. If we look at what the market actually does, take the 90s out and look at the market in any other 10-year period, you're going to be better off paying off a loan with certainty. It can improve your cash flow. You're getting a guaranteed savings versus a non-guaranteed earnings.
Yes.
So it really comes down to personal preference. If an employer really wants to do the best for the employee, it's about getting them one-on-one time to build a customized plan. And if you want to match, guess what? If you match them on any of the customized plan, whether it's paying off loans or the own types of investments that they want to get into, it's still the same write-off for the employer.
Cool.
It just takes a little more time, a little more responsibility, but this is why we've been talking with firms that actually have video training for the employees on doing these things. Like we've had enough. Remember when we went to ShopFix?
Yeah.
And it was like the question, because those people really cared about their employees.
Absolutely.
And they wanted the answer. But there's not a quick fix right now. Just say, no, this is as automatic as a 401k. And But if you just take a little bit of time, give them some education, give them some support, and then find out what's best for them, you can choose to contribute as much or as little as you would have with the 401k.
Cool.
Here's what we heard from Nehemiah. I'm considering withdrawing money from my active 401k. Right now, the potential plan is to take that money, which is about $50,000 after assumed tax, to create an overfunded whole life policy for both my wife and myself, and then withdraw as much of the immediately accessible cash value to pay off all remaining debts and then fund our peace of mind account. The thought process here is to have interest growing on the entire $50,000 and pay that all back gradually with the income from our current jobs until we can eventually replace our incomes with investments. My wife isn't completely sold on cash flow banking because she's never heard of it, and she's of the opinion that if it isn't broke, then don't fix it. Or if it isn't broke, don't break it. With our current situation, how would you go about handling the 401k money, the debt payments, and the availability of cash? He says, thank you for your advice. I've read all your books and Kiyosaki's and others in the attempt to become financially mastermind sooner rather than later.
A financial mastermind or financially mastermind?
A financial mastermind.
Hey, I'm here to help you out today still, but I know it's been a long week for you.
I need you today.
Yeah, you can lean on me. And you said I wouldn't be able to make you laugh. I've done pretty good so far.
Yeah.
So mostly at your own expense, but
Should
it's
we
fine.
make everybody else laugh and sing Lean on Me together?
So if it ain't broke, don't break it. Let me say this. That's what you said. If it ain't broke, don't break it.
That's what it says in the question.
Well, I'm saying that's fine.
I'm telling you, that's why it threw me off.
The problem is 401ks are broke because your partner is the government.
Mm-hmm.
They're $27 trillion in debt.
And counting.
And you're not saving tax or deferring tax and delaying tax. And because of inflation, you're going to want a lot more money in the future. And because we've got someone here reading books and doing the work, he's going to be wealthier in the future. Mm-hmm. So don't just defer those taxes into the future and go, oh, now everything's fine. Because right now there is a provision where you can get that money out without the 10% penalty potentially because of COVID. Mm-hmm. But let's start to break this down. First is you're not just going to cash this out and put it all into cash flow banking because of the way cash flow banking works. There's modified endowment contracts, which you can only put a certain amount of money before you lose your tax benefit. Mm-hmm. But getting it out of the 401k still is an idea to maybe talk to an investment advisor and really look at. Most investment advisors are pro retirement plans because they get paid on them. Mm-hmm. I'm not really a big fan of them. Okay, but then he's saying go to an overfunded cash value policy first, and that could be a good idea, but here's the things to watch for. Number one, it takes a bit to capitalize. So let's just say you could put 50 grand in there. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have 50 grand in the plan because there are costs. Some might point that out as commission costs and all that kind of stuff. What it really is that the overall commission costs are kind of spread over time and paid directly from the company, but obviously they're profitable because of these plans. So there's reserve requirements that are there. There's those factors that kind of go into this. And so you're not going to have the full amount in there. So you got to look at that first and foremost. Then second, I like that he's talking about putting this money into cash value, then utilizing the cash value to pay off the loans. And if those loans are charging more than what you're earning in the policy, then do that, right? Because then you're paying that off. And then you can take the money that was going to the loans and pay back the policy. Because now you could do is you get your cash value, you get to use it as collateral. The insurance company will lend you money at a very preferred rate, and then you can pay that back on your own terms. It doesn't impact your credit, but you're going to free up that cash flow. And what's nice is your money's still in the cash value, earning interest during that time.
Sounds like a lovely thing.
So you're earning interest during that time. Yes, you're paying interest to the insurance company for lending you the money, but at the same time, this is going to be on your schedule now. You can decide how much you pay into it, how much you don't pay into it, where the other, loans are fixed prices. And a lot of loans right now are pretty competitive interest rates. So we also want to look at that. Mm-hmm. Mortgages are at pretty much like an all-time low as we're recording this.
Yeah.
Even car loans are very inexpensive if you have the right credit. Mm-hmm. But I do like the way he's thinking because I look at this as money in motion. So I have my cash value policies, right? I put extra money into those policies. And early on in my life, I used to use the cash value to make down payments on real estate. Then I would get the real estate. I would take the rents from the real estate to pay back the cash value.
Yeah.
And then one time I started to use that cash to do hard money lending, which is I was actually a bridge financer. Like someone would find an awesome deal on a property and they'd need to act quickly. So I would charge them a bunch of money, like 10%, right, for having this money for 60 days. So, it's a pretty good rate of return when you think it's really more like a 60% rate of return annualized. So I was getting a really good return, but I was giving them access to cash they didn't otherwise have. And then when that money would come back in, again, I'd be buying property and paying down payments and using the renters to pay that back and then buy more property. So it was kind of the keeping money in motion. And I like that thought process.
Turnover.
Because he's not just thinking about setting it and forgetting it and just waiting for 30 years hoping it's going to pan out. He's recognizing, hey, I can start building this cash reserve that I can use when there's good things to invest in. But right now, the best thing to invest in might be paying off those loans, freeing up the mind, the mindset and all that kind of stuff. And, not doing the retirement plan, kind of a good idea.
I know this might be a little bit difficult to answer, but when someone's taking money out of their policy, what is the interest rate on that versus what they would get if they had a loan at a bank? Like, is it drastically lower or? It
depends on the person. Okay. So I was speaking at an event a couple years ago, and there was a guy that does a lot of life insurance, loves my books. And he came up and he's like, hey, we actually have a deal right now where Bank of America is using the cash value as collateral rather than the insurance company. And they're only charging 2.75%. And that was when interest rates were a little bit higher. So that might make more sense because some insurance companies might be charging 5% right now. And 5%, for a collateralized loan isn't a great deal. It's a great deal during other times because a lot of times when interest rates are really high, which they haven't been for a long time, you're getting a much more preferred rate from the insurance company than you would out there in the marketplace. In today's time, though, interest rates are so low out there that if you have the right credit, the right collateral, you might be able to get a better deal from a bank, but you're now using your credit. You're now on the bank's payback period. You have more restrictions. You're jumping through more hoops versus just filling out a form or making a phone call and getting the money sent to you.
Yeah.
So you got to look at the ease, the convenience, and the quickness of just using it from the insurance company standpoint. But I like your question to look at what makes more sense,
Yeah.
All right, let's talk,
So when you were talking about money in motion, you were referring to velocity.
Yeah. So
or is there more to that piece of the conversation?
So to define velocity versus accumulation, this is something I learned in my early 20s. It's kind of like an economic concept, velocity is, and it's how the economy's measured or how it works a lot of times is we take the output of an economy, which is the GDP, gross domestic product, divided by M2, which is the money supply. So simply it's just output divided by inputs, right?
Okay.
So
simple enough.
So, and what it does is it tells us a number, and that number is how many times did money exchange hands that year? The more frequently, the higher the velocity, right? Because if I buy something from you, it's not the end of that money. You get to take and use it again, and then someone else uses it. So, this whole notion that there's a finite pie, I wrote about it in my first chapter of Killing Sacred Cows.
Yeah.
Well, people think money and pie are the same thing. They're not. Even if there was a finite amount of money, they're printing it while I say this or adding it to screens.
Yep.
There's an unlimited number of times it can exchange hands. So the more frequently it exchanges hands because of goods, services, and experiences of solving problems, serving people, and delivering value, the more wealth is created. So exchange actually creates wealth. And so the more velocity that we can create, the more wealth. So how does this apply on a personal level? Well, there's the Stolva output divided by input. So if I tell you to take more risk, that's an input. That doesn't help you out. If I tell you to add more money, well, that's an input. That doesn't necessarily increase your velocity, right? And that's where a lot of people are at their finances is, take more risk or set more money aside. So what we focus on is how do we keep the inputs fixed, but increase output through velocity.
Okay.
So there's two main focuses for velocity. One is efficiency. If something's more efficient, it's going to, travel further essentially.
Yeah. And this is when you would encourage someone to look at their insurance policies.
Yeah. Is there duplicate coverages or
interest
costs?
rates on their credit cards?
Can they renegotiate or lower their interest rates? Are they overpaying on tax? Are there hidden fees or commissions in their, investment plans? So we're just finding money. That's part of the efficiency. So that intelligence or that knowledge increases the output without you putting more input in. It's through savvy. The second thing is expansion. So expansion can be scale. It could be motion. And so if I've got, let's say $100,000 that is now kicking off cash flow for me. When I first did this, I had $100,000. that I was doing hard money lending with, which was consistently getting me 1% per month. So I'm getting $1,000 a month. I was taking that $1,000, I was putting it into my cash value, right? Then that cash value was growing, and then I was buying property. That property would appreciate. I would refinance. I'd put more money in hard money lending. And so all of a sudden, I'm getting more turns on my money. I'm getting the interest from the first investment. I'm buying real estate. I'm getting tax benefits. I'm getting cash flow. I'm getting appreciation. As it appreciates and I refinance, I'm putting more money in the front end hard money lending fund. And so I'm keeping money in motion. I'm not trying to utilize accumulation, which is all about, okay, if I want to be having more money in the future in accumulation, it's how much money can I put away, right? That's the budgeting, takes money to make money kind of thought process. And then it's how do I get a better return, which most people think to get a better return, they take more risk, but risk equals a higher chance of loss.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is, it's all about how long can I wait? Compound interest will come in and save me. The problem is accumulation is a slow, tedious, dangerous process.
Is that because your money's stagnant?
It's
just
very
sitting there,
stagnant,
right?
You know, compound interest doesn't look good in the first 5 years or 10 years. It looks good in the 20th and 30th year. And then there's a lot of things that can trip you up along the way. You know, financial disasters or concerns or financial crises or collapses, or there's just so many things that happen along the way. And I think that all institutions, especially banks, are going, we want cash flow. Yet they're telling you, you want to accumulate. Well, they get cash flow. So
different story.
So I think cash flow investing is really a completely different methodology that's a much more impactful, it's safer, but it requires more effort. It requires more knowledge. It requires, participation. It requires like doing something instead of just handing things over. So I like having cash value because if I don't know where to invest in the moment because I don't think it's a good time, or I just want to take a break and I just want to, have a sabbatical where I'm writing and I'm not focused on those things, I know I'm storing my money in a place that's protected on the downside, not participating in a recession, getting a guaranteed interest rate once it's paid, a dividend becomes guaranteed once that enters the plan, and it's available to me along the way. So where people dislike it is because so much of it's designed poorly. It's high commission, low cash. It's with these companies that weren't really designed to offer these types of plans, or people that skip steps and take more risk by moving to index type things that have volatility within their fee system or within their expenses. And so it deserves some of the bad reputation it gets. But if people, as he says, his wife has never heard of it. Yeah, there's a lot of things that people probably haven't heard of with finance. Like they probably never heard of private placement life insurance. They probably never heard of premium financing. They probably never heard of charitable remainder trust. They probably never heard of a Section 1202 for selling a business. But these are the things that the wealthy people have been doing for an extraordinary long period of time that didn't trickle down to the middle class. When I wrote What Would Billionaires Do, I was like, how do I take something that the wealthiest people do and find a way to design it for anyone, even if they just have $50 a month, and make sure it's available. It's not identical, but I at least took the main concepts to provide that benefit, because unfortunately, if you're super wealthy, you can get stuff without commission, right? Or you can have it specialty designed and you can have it more cash heavy because of the way that it's built. But there are ways to at least mimic that to a certain degree. So the lesson here is money in motion and velocity over accumulation. And that I like the way that he's thinking, and have a read What Would Billionaires Do? They can go to billionairesmethod.com, and it's super inexpensive. I think it's a few bucks to grab that book in PDF or listen to the audio.
Yeah. So if they don't have the policies that you're referring to and have that situation with the real estate that you were using to keep your money in motion, if someone's a W-2 employee or they're just getting started out, what's one thing that they can do to keep their money in motion? Because it's not just about going to Target and, buying some things, right? Can we expand that for the person who doesn't have these policies?
All right. So here's what you do. You've got to start with building savings. Not investing. People call their 401k a savings plan. It's an investment plan.
Yeah.
Savings is available, liquid, safe. It probably isn't earning much money. Don't worry about earning the money. Have that there so you have peace of mind. As soon as you have a little bit of money there, now you can go, and here's the velocity for you. You can go change your deductibles on your car and your home, or your elimination period on your disability policy, or you can start to drop coverages because you've got the ability to handle the small things, which can save you a bunch of money.
Okay.
There's a first step. And then you can start looking at, well, where else can I create velocity? Well, if you're buying term insurance and investing into your retirement plan, it looks good on paper in the immediate moment, because when you get that retirement plan statement, it looks like, oh, I've got $10,000 in here. No, you don't. You've got $10,000 that the government still has a right to take their fair share of. And fair is a pretty,
what
nominal
is fair
word.
when it comes to the government?
I'm using their terminology, not
Right.
mine. And so when you go to pull that out, they're taking tax and potentially even penalty based upon when you take it out. So it looks good on paper, but it doesn't deliver in reality because of the net of expenses and fees and taxes. And then you still have this term insurance that eventually becomes so expensive that if you live to life expectancy, you'll pay more for term insurance premiums than the death benefit because it's cheap when you're not going to die.
Right.
It's super cheap. But
cheap
it's
when you don't need it.
expensive when you don't have it. Where here's the deal, we're all going to die. And even if like Ray Kurzweil figures out how to upload our consciousness to a computer, the bottom line is when you're 100 or 120, depending on the type of policy, they consider a living death and pay out the death benefit. So why, when we know we're going to die for sure, would we drop insurance at the time that we have the likelihood of death? It makes no sense, but it's because people are measuring the wrong metrics. They don't understand how to look at this. And so if you actually can move to an overfunded cash value, you're going to get some velocity because you're going to save on term insurance premiums.
Okay.
You're going to save on taxes, not just temporarily, but there's ways to permanently save, unlike the deferral of a retirement plan. You might be able to save on long-term care insurance because there's riders that allow you to access your death benefit if you need long-term care, which might create, once again, another benefit there. And that money's available to you. So if you have to pay off high interest rate loans, it's available. Versus it might not be as available inside of a retirement plan because there's restrictions on how much you can take out and there's restrictions on how you have to pay it back.
The only way your IRA or 401k is tax advantaged is if your plan fails, or I guess if the government reduces the tax rate. Don't think that's going to happen. See, these aren't tax savings, they're tax delaying. There's such a huge difference between saving tax and delaying it. One says you don't have to. The other one says you don't have to pay today, you're still going to owe eventually. And this savings, by the way, when you put money in the plan, is not in your pocket. Your money is trapped inside of a government-controlled, government-sponsored plan, and you're at a 10% disadvantage from day one if you're under 59.5. And by the way, you still owe taxes when you take your money out. Now look, advisors will tout how beneficial this plan is, but ask them, how do you get to the money? What's the exit strategy? How can you get your money out tax efficiently? Now, if they answer in the following few ways, fire them. Number one, if they tell you you'll be in a lower tax bracket in the future, how are you gonna be in a lower tax bracket? Have less money? Have more kids living at home? Well, if they're over 18, they're not a write-off like they were before. Start a business, have a bunch of tax deductions there. In the future, if you're funding these plans, it's probably because you want to retire. And when people tell you can live off less money and retire, ask people how that's working for them right now because of all the inflation we've seen in 2020, 21, and 22, and who knows how long that's going to continue. They can't live off less money. So saying that you're going to have less money in the future is actually them telling you, I think the plan's going to fail. We're not going to make you that much money. This plan isn't going to have enough money to continue the same lifestyle. Others say, oh, well, guess what? You can pay off your home and then you won't need that money. All I know is if I have 7 days off a week, I'm probably going to order far too much Amazon. Maybe when they came up with that notion of you can live off 70% of your pre-retirement income, that was before we had one click, before something showed up to your doorstep. So be careful with that thing. That's the first reason to fire them. They say you're going to be a lower tax bracket, admitting that the plan's not going to work. Second is they tell you that the tax-deferred growth will give you more money. Okay, let's break that down a little bit. If tax rates stay the same, they're equal now to when you retire in the future and pull money out of the plan, it doesn't matter whether you do a Roth IRA or traditional IRA. By the time you take out whatever amount, you'll net the same as far as what you could spend. Why? Because, okay, with the Roth IRA, you're taking after-tax dollars and investing them. It grows tax-deferred, and under the current circumstances, after 59.5, you can take it out tax-free. Awesome, right? You paid tax on the seed, not on kind of the harvest. On a traditional IRA, you put money in pre-tax, it grows tax-deferred, and when you take it out, you pay taxes. Again, yeah, it'll look like more amount in the account, but if you pull that money out, you owe whatever tax rate on it, and then you end up netting the same amount that you would have in the Roth. So Roth is pay tax now, take it out tax-free later. Well, if taxes go up in the future, you'll be happy that you paid the tax today. If they go down, which I don't know how they're going to, with the amount of government spending that's out there, you might want to reconsider. See, traditionals always pay tax later. And often people think that paying the tax later means there's the money that's going to grow to a larger amount. And yes, it will. There will be more money than in the Roth, but you'll have to pay tax and take it out and then net the same amount that you would have had from the Roth. But again, if taxes go up, you'd be better with the Roth, paying tax on some of the lower tax rates today and along the way. So let's talk about the biggest reasons these IRAs and 401ks and government qualified plans are touted as tax advantaged when they're actually a disadvantage. Here's the reason they're a disadvantage. Number one, inflation. As you need more money to maintain the same lifestyle, you'll start to have a higher marginal tax rate. Let's look at the marginal graphs. Let's look at the top tax rates over time. Look from 1944 to 1981, how high the tax rate was during that time. Imagine at the time where you see it above 90%. What if you took, like right now, where it's less than 40% and you defer it into the future where it's up to 80%? Wouldn't you be kind of pissed? So inflation means that you have to earn more money to live the same lifestyle, to have the same purchasing power. When we have to earn more money, you'll see you're going to start to be pushed up to higher rates because you have more income coming in, even if that income doesn't allow you to purchase quite as much. The second thing is related to that, raised tax rates. Looking at the same chart, notice how many years were higher than the taxes today, and the government's $30+ trillion in debt. So what if they have to raise revenue? What if they have to raise money? Part of how they do that is taxes, the biggest part. So what if you have more money in the future because you're successful, and that puts you at a higher rate? Or what if the government says they're just going to raise the rates because they need more money? Or what if because of inflation you have to have more money to live the same lifestyle? These are disadvantages to a retirement plan. Now the third piece. What if you don't want to take out the money because you're worried about paying taxes? If you hate paying taxes today, don't you think you'll hate paying taxes in the future too? Like you're deferring, you're delaying because you're like, I don't want to pay tax on this and I get this great tax advantage. But when you go to pull it out, you're like, oh crap, I don't want to pay taxes. So if you never touch the money, it might as well be 100% tax rate. And what if you leave that behind to your heirs? You can leave it to a spouse, tax-free. You can, I guess, leave it on to your kids if you do a stretch IRA, stretching it out so that you don't pay tax, but then again, they can never utilize it. So if you do it right, I guess nobody spends the money. And what's great is the institutions, they keep taking the fees and, I don't know, I'm not a huge fan, as you could tell, but if you leave this behind into, an heir that's not your spouse, it could be taxed in that year, pushing it into the highest tax bracket if you have a decent amount of money in this. These are my concerns. Number one, inflation can mean that you have a higher tax rate in the future just because you need more money for the same lifestyle. Raise tax rates. The government may say, hey, we need more money because we're spending and we're at $30+ trillion in debt. And maybe it's just that you have more money in the future due to success. These could all push your deferred taxes into a higher tax rate in the future. And then just the psyche of not wanting to take the money out because you hate paying taxes now, but you still hate paying them in the future. So you keep delaying it until they force you into required minimum distributions.
This one's coming in from Michael H. He has a 401k. He's wanting to redirect it. Obviously, a lot of these people writing in also are wanting to avoid penalties. So that'll be a part of our conversation. But he says he has a large sum of money in banks, which he believes is not safe. What should I do? Do I roll it over into a life insurance company? He was saying that on Money Revealed that the Roth IRA seemed to be like a upper poor class plan. So he's just wanting to know what to do instead.
An upper poor class plan. Let's just start on the safety of the money. So, and then we can kind of tackle his questions one by one. Safety of the money. Well, banks do have FDIC insurance, or if it's a credit union, they have the equivalent that's insured up to $250,000 of. It's not really the government that backs it. It's like an institution where a bunch of these institutions pool their money, and then if someone fails, they try and pay everyone back. The life insurance thing, completely different story, right, Garrett? Like right. We completely agree on this. These are companies that I don't say never fail, but especially if it's a mutual company, we're talking about companies that have been in business for 150 plus years and have just never not paid anyone.
Yeah, I'd say banks are fairly safe unless they're maybe some of the big ones that finance all the major things in our country.
Yep.
Like I feel, even if they weren't as safe, I mean, companies like Chase and Wells Fargo, they're going to be around, and if they're not around, we're all in a lot of trouble. Yep. A regional bank might go out of business, and it's not even big news. Where these insurance companies, so rare for them to fail, and I mean, we've got Utah Guarantee Life Association, I've heard, has never been tapped into, which is like the FDIC for insurance companies.
Correct. Yeah, it's never been tapped into, including in 2008 when one of our companies that were life insurance company in Utah failed, but it didn't fail.
Just got bought out by another
It just
company.
got bought out because they're like, this is going to fail. And then you have to think about it from kind of the insurance industry perspective. They don't want the name of their whole industry to be like, oh, these guys don't pay benefits. So it's like, so they'll step in and take care of.
Yeah, people say, what happens when the life insurance companies fail? I'm like, you better have commodities and food storage because it's going to be a pretty ugly situation for the whole economy at that point.
People kind of ask me that when they buy life insurance policies, and I'm like, well, you might actually be growing your own food at that point. So like
in the bunker, you know, like, how's that sound? You live it. You just got to store your corn.
I can do that.
You're gonna have plenty of the corn. So.
All right, what else we got?
I'll trade my corn for your elk.
Yeah.
Well, with my ability to shoot this year, you might be starving with me.
I think there were a couple more questions in his.
Yeah. So Michael, what we're saying is life insurance companies are very dependable. It would be a good plan for him
especially mutual ones.
Yeah, redirect his 401k in that direction.
But you can't quite directly roll it over like you would a normal IRA.
So does he need to take his money from his 401k, roll it over into a Roth IRA before he does that, or what does that transition look like?
Even there, that's going to trigger a tax.
A tax event. Yeah. So I mean, if you're really have hit the point where you've made a decision that, hey, I'm going to move this 401k money over to a life insurance policy, well, plan on tax and penalty happening unless you're at over 59.5. Like, it's just going to be part of the equation.
You might do that over time, not all up front in that year. You know, you're going to be taking it out and putting it into a plan that's after tax. You know, you're not putting money into life insurance pre-tax 99.99% of the time. Yeah. And the few that do are just basically moving it to another type of 401k type of plan where they're going to pay tax on the back end. So I don't really recommend that.
Yeah, where Garrett and I have discussed, like, real estate in an IRA or a 401k, like, there are certain benefits that go away as soon as you do life insurance in a retirement plan.
It's expensive.
You're doing the same sort of thing where it's like, well, why did you buy it then?
So you know, if you hate paying tax now, you're still going to hate paying tax later, maybe even more. And so create tax strategy around it. And we have a lot of videos on tax strategy on my YouTube channel. You know, so if you subscribe there, you can watch those videos and find out what offsets are. But in and of itself, the plan doesn't come with real tax benefit. It's tax deferral.
Okay.
Roth IRA, a little bit better because it's under current law. You're going to pull it out tax-free, but you're funding it after tax. Now, Ryan, there's a lot of people that believe that, oh, well, you're better off going pre-tax because then in the future you'll end up with more money than if you go post-tax and it's tax-free. But the reality is if taxes stayed exactly the same, it would be the exact same scenario. You'd look like you had more money in the traditional IRA that was pre-tax, but when you go to pull it out, you're going to pay taxes. Like, yeah, but then, you know, what if I had all that time where it compounded and it grew? Well, so did the tax. Yeah. Compound interest equals compound tax. That's something to remember.
The government still gets their slice of the pie.
Right.
No matter what. And I guess I can understand a scenario where for certain people, mentally it feels better. Oh, look, I have $1 million instead of I have $1 million instead of 600,000.
Yep.
You know? Yep. And it's like, well, no, you actually have 600,000. The other 400,000 is the government.
It just doesn't look like it until you go to spend it, and then it's like, oh, there they are. There they are. They're still there for you. They'll got your back when it comes to collection of tax. You don't ever have to worry about that stuff. But they have your back.
100% guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
One of the few countries in the world where you can actually go to prison for not paying your taxes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right.
So I guess one of my clarifying questions is when someone's ready to redirect or cash out their 401k, what is that process? How long does that process take? Is this something that's going to take them a month or 6 months?
Yeah. So cashing out is kind of the big question, right? I have this big bucket of cash and I want to pull it all versus like periodic payments or something that way. That it's kind of two different scenarios. But back to what Garrett said, the government gets their slice on the way out, whether you take $1,000 a month forever or all of it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But when it comes out, it does come out as regular income. So whatever the tax rates are at that point, when you pull it out, you just made that amount, and it'll be treated like a salary. So even if you're done working altogether and retired, you pull $100,000 out tomorrow. Congratulations, you just made $100,000.
And if you're just taking a withdrawal from your existing plan, it's going to be pretty quick that you can get that money. But if you're doing a rollover, 30 to 90 days.
So it depends on where the money is and how far you're going, like away from where the money currently is.
It's no longer going to be at Fidelity. It's going to take longer.
Correct. Okay. Like half the time, and I'll just use Fidelity since you brought up.
And you worked there back in the day.
That too. But like if your 401k's at Fidelity, rolling your money from a 401k at Fidelity to an IRA at Fidelity might be 3 days.
Yeah.
But if you're taking it from Fidelity to Schwab, guess what?
What's the longest it's taken you with the client moving from one company to another?
About 6 months.
6 months. So that's
about 6 months.
6 months. And what's the best case scenario going from one company to another?
Probably like a week and a half.
Ooh,
something.
I didn't know it'd be that fast. I expected like 30 days.
No, like a week and a half. But they and you got to think about it. Part of it is like these anti-fraud provisions and all that, but the underlying thing too is they like having your money.
Yeah,
it's
like showing up to the airport. You don't know how long that line's going to be.
True.
But it's like having pre-check if you're going with the same company.
Yep. If you go to the company,
otherwise you don't know what that line. It might be. You might be there for an hour. You might be there for 5 minutes.
Yeah. And so for me, going to the same.
But if you want to have fun, just opt out. There you go. Get the pat down.
Just don't travel. Is what Garrett's saying.
Not only fun do you get them, with the back of their hand rubbing you in places you shouldn't be rubbed, and then Stolba, them lecturing you that it's fine just to go through that. It's not radiation. You get more radiation at the top. So there you go. You didn't know you were going to learn that today, but you just did.
Idea.
There you go. That's a bonus.
Rabbit hole.
It's a bonus money nerd session.
Treat.
Yeah. All right. Well, now what?
Okay. Let's go to.
These are the perks you get working here that you can't put on paper for money.
Employer benefit.
Just pure enjoyment and laughter and side lessons.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
Let's get to. Let's see. Catherine's question. We'll start off with this one. So Catherine is 71 years old. So she's wanting to cash out of her 401k.
You're just trying to.
I got to pull it together.
Okay. 71.
So if she's over the 59 and a half, is there anything that's different for her in pulling out her money?
She's got two things different at 71.
Yeah. So
RMDs.
You have to at 70 and a half.
You have to take a certain amount out. Unless you like
there's a
penalty.
requirement to take that.
Required minimum distribution.
Okay.
And
that's the first time I heard my grandma say the F word. I literally said,
heard her say it again?
at 70, that was the dam that broke. It was very common afterwards. But before that, she was holding it together. I'm like, Grandma, you got to take this money out. Otherwise, there's a penalty. And plus your income tax. She's like, plus. And then the F word slipped. And then,
the rest was history.
I just remember just quick story. I was reminded of this
trail
today.
number 2. Yeah. Here we go.
Brought my wife and son out to Chicago when he's like 9 months old, 1 year old. I don't know, 14 months old. You'll know better than I. Young. Okay. But we're like driving into the city. I go pick him up and he keeps going, "Excuse me, truck." I'm like, "What?" My wife's like, yeah. Someone cut me off on the way to the airport. So I said effing truck and had to tell him I meant, "Excuse me, truck." And so once he repeated the first thing, then it was "Excuse me, truck." So anyway, my grandma, that dam broke. And then it was the required minimum distribution pushed over the top.
I can see why.
And then plus, there's no 10% penalty after 59 and a half. So but you do have to start taking it at 70 and a half.
Yeah, it comes out as regular income. So you just made money. But you made the money years ago. You just chose to not pay tax on that money whenever you earned it.
It's kind of like when you don't feel like working out, Stolba, and you're like, "I'll just do that later." You're never happy that you waited later, right? You're like, this still sucks. Or when you're like, I'll do the dishes, take out the garbage later, like my wife asked. It's never at an opportune time later. I'm more tired, not better off. So like this delay thing doesn't really work with taxes.
Wait. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like my daughter who she's like, "Dad, work's tough." And I'm like, if it was not work, they'd just call it fun.
Hey man, I was stuck in Guatemala yesterday, stuck there because you can't use Italian passports to out of Guatemala with your kids, but you can get them there. And I just told my
geez.
wife, I'm like, we could create an amazing life lesson for them right now if we just go. Like, can a 12 and 14-year-old get out of Guatemala on their own? And she didn't think it was as funny as I did in the
Survival school.
moment. I was just trying to make light of a situation. We're here though today. We're just,
You made it.
but like
Yeah.
there,
You made
like
it.
I will never complain about things because man, they were doing serious work there,
Yeah.
hard work.
Yeah.
A guy was pushing an ice cream truck, like cart, up a hill because there was so much traffic with the thing. I'm like, oh, he's not even driving, he's pushing. So you know when people tell the stories about walking to school uphill in snow,
ways.
up
Both ways.
No, this dude lived that life. So my kids have no way to complain when I'm asking them to do manual labor. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, another side note, just another bonus. All right, what's next?
We're all about bonuses, aren't we? Okay. So Anne, her question is, you answered my questions on Money Revealed
You're
about
welcome.
liquidating her 401k. And then you mentioned provisions and directed us, to this conversation. So she's interested in what those provisions might be. I know in the financial space, we throw around a lot of lingo.
Yep.
But what
I'll
do you
say
mean by
what they were, and
provisions?
you can explain them.
Yep.
One time Roth conversion from a traditional 72T distribution, right? Those were the two provisions.
Keep the list short.
Yeah. So the Roth conversion we've covered in a prior episode.
Yep.
But essentially, you're going to take all that money, claim it as income, but you can get out of the 10% penalty under 59.5. But you got to pay the tax.
They'll move it to a tax preferred environment. Under current law, tax free.
including
They
gains.
could change that, but
if
yeah,
you take it
and
out
gains,
over
yeah.
a certain period of time, and
72T is just a provision to avoid the 10% penalty.
Yeah. So usually the way I explain a 72T to people is, and Garrett mentions the 72T often, but the best way to kind of understand it is we talked about RMDs.
Yep, required minimum distributions.
Required
not
minimum distribution.
WMDs. Weapons of mass destruction, RMDs. They're closely related. Did you see this flex? Like, you are very proud of yourself for that one. Look, I haven't seen you laugh this hard ever. And it was from your own
I am
joke.
kind of funny.
From your own joke, Stolba.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So required
RMDs.
minimum distributions, RMDs, or sometimes you'll hear them called MRDs, which is the same
Minimum
words,
required
which is the
distribution.
exact same thing, but in a different order, the same words.
Well, isn't that
So-
confusing? No wonder people have a hard time
Yeah.
deciphering all of this information.
If financial people use enough jargon, you just have to trust
You stay
them.
confused.
And that's how I started
Oh, yeah.
when I was 19. I'm like, I'm just going to sound super smart, even though I know what the hell I'm talking about. And then people will trust me. And then they did. And then their money did well for 2 years. And then they got their butts kicked in 2000. And I realized, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. And I had to tell them that, which sucked. I didn't like telling them that, but that's why I'm still doing it. Because
Yep.
Yeah.
I had to go learn this. And they trusted me.
Yep. Okay, so
I've
just
always
let's-
respected Garrett for the fact that he owns things like that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not everyone does.
It's true. Okay, so let's just back up here.
okay.
So
72T,
RMD,
Required minimum distribution.
and then what was the opposite?
MRD,
MRD.
minimum required distribution.
Okay, I
They're
just kept
exactly the
WRD.
WMD, weapons of mass destruction.
Okay.
So that's not what we're talking about
Yeah.
Okay.
here. So most people kind of know what those are. When you hit 70.5, you got to take money out of your account.
And that was like Catherine earlier.
So the way I explain a 72T to people, you can do it if you're 10 years old or 40 years old.
Going to be doing it for a long time
But-
at 10.
Yeah, exactly. But you can do it before the age of 59.5. And essentially what you're doing is telling the government, hey, I'm retiring.
I want to start taking the income
Yep.
from my retirement
Yep.
plan.
And you may not be retiring, quote unquote, like you're not retiring, but what you're doing is taking those same formulas and saying, I can take this amount of money proportionately without the penalty, but I have to do it until I'm of retirement age.
Right.
So if you start at 40, you got to track that stuff.
You got that for
till you're
19 and a half
59
years.
and a half.
Yeah, 19 and a half years.
But we do, Garrett and I both work with a lot of business owners, and it does make sense in certain cases because I've worked with business owners where they have $3 million in pension plans,
Yeah.
but could not write you a check for 20 grand tomorrow if you asked them to.
Now, Stolba, a really important
yeah.
question for you. What do you think makes me look more trustworthy? The fact that I look a little like Jesus or the gray hair?
The gray hair.
Okay, just checking. Okay, back to the topic.
I'm going with the beard
You like, yeah,
because I have
beard?
a beard too.
yeah. Not the hair, because he doesn't have that.
And I don't have
It's
hair.
the man bun.
So, yeah.
The man bun.
All right.
Okay.
Next question.
All right. So I guess this piggybacks off one that we had earlier, but this is what she said. Thank you so much for your service to the public. I appreciate you and you give me hope. That's a great compliment.
I love that.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
We're here to give you
hopefully
hope
after my
in the
jokes
midst
today,
of
there's
all of
still
this
hope.
crazy
Hope
chaos.
and laughter. What a bonus.
Yes. So she's also 71 years old. She's retired. She would say that she's lower middle class, and she's just wondering if it's a good or bad idea to start getting out money and putting it into a modest money market account that she has.
So part of that depends on her fear around the market, how she's invested.
Because she could put it in a money market inside of the plan. It doesn't have to come out of the plan. That there are fixed income options, right?
So what some people don't really do a good job of, I have to explain this all the time, is separating the investment from the plan. Because it's like, well, your
one's a vehicle, one's the fuel for the vehicle.
Yeah. So your 401k can own Amazon stock or cash. Or whatever.
Bonds.
Yeah, bonds or
real estate.
Yeah.
A business that you don't have control over.
Correct. So that's the investment. The 401k is just it's like a government category of money. It just says, hey IRS, I have not paid tax on this bucket right here.
Yeah,
so
that's why it's a tax code like 401k. 457, 403B. Yeah, like you hear all these numbers because it's referencing the part of the tax code.
Okay.
Yeah. So
did you know
to
that
me
already?
Or
did
I did not. I'm learning
look at us
myself.
just dropping
and I'm not even
knowledge.
embarrassed to admit it. I'm learning right on the
I
set
could just
with
see
you
the
guys.
look on your face. You're like, I'm learning right now.
By the time
I'm
we're
getting paid to learn.
Oh man.
by the time we're done doing all this, you're gonna just take over our jobs. And
oh, she's already let me know that these are very popular videos with her involved in them. Yeah, she's like creating an agency. I'm gonna have to sign up and pay her all sorts of fees for it.
I'll have you a guest. I'll have you as a guest on my YouTube channel later.
There you go. But yeah, so you can own cash / money market inside of a 401k or an IRA.
And I would watch the tax rates. Like if they're going to go up, then you could cash it out and put it in that. If they're remaining stable, you have maneuverability.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially at 71.
And I'm one of our future episodes. I do have a plan to go over historic tax rates in our country because I don't think people really understand that they're lower than they've kind of ever been right now, and it's probably not going to stay that
from
way.
1944 to 1981, they were higher than they are today.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So they're probably not going to stay that way forever. So if you're looking for a time to pull the trigger,
I was just going to say now's a good
now's
time.
not the worst time.
Yeah, it's not the worst time. And then part B to that is, what's your personal situation? Are you making a bunch of money this year, but are going to retire next year? Well, then maybe next year's the time.
Yep.
Because tax code's probably not going to change in the next 18 months. But after that,
she has a lot of flexibility where she's at in this stage.
Okay. So for someone who doesn't know what a money market account is, do one of you want to explain
it's
that?
not an account, it's a fund.
Okay.
So
it feels a lot like a savings account, but it's really, really short-term loans, essentially. Sometimes businesses use it to make payroll during cash crunch, but they're viewed as fairly safe, but not as guaranteed as a FDIC savings account.
Okay.
Correct. So they typically pay a higher interest rate than a savings account,
But not massively higher.
but like 0.1.
Not excitingly higher.
Yeah.
But they have a track record of being stable and safe.
So their debt, if you understand what bonds are, where it's like
It's a loan to a business.
you've loaned
It's
a business
loan to the
or
government.
a government or a company. Money markets it's a mutual fund that owns a whole bunch of that, but
Really super short
But
term.
it all has to mature in the next 30 days.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like,
All right.
but it's not like your payday places, you know,
Oh, the payday
where
loan
it's
places?
like, oh, I can cash my check now before the money's there, and they charge them double-digit high interest rates. These are more like stable, bigger entities that are doing this for major amounts of money.
So like if a savings account paid you 1%, maybe a money market pays you 1.6.
I feel like this is where we should have the star come across. The more you know. Remember those?
Oh,
The more you know.
the more you know. Yeah.
Those were like public service announcements with
Was
an
that-
actor.
Yeah. Was that NBC or something?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember that.
So on the money market versus savings account thing, this is a total aside. You're taking it aside on jokes. I'm taking it aside on finance because I'm the finance dude.
You're the money nerd.
People get so hung up on whether their savings account pays them 1% or I'm going to switch banks because they pay 1.2. It's like, it's a savings account or a money market. Isn't the point to actually just be liquid?
Yeah. Because
like, are you really worried about the $80 you sacrifice?
Yeah, because the real return is if you have savings, your peace of mind, so you can be more productive. The staying power in case something that's a financial surprise comes up, a family issue, a health issue, you can handle it. But the real big return is if you have enough cash on hand, you don't have to have really low deductibles on insurances. You can raise those up and just take care of that yourself. Or you don't have to have really short-term insurance policies like disability policies. They can kick in later and you can once again save major amounts of money on that because you have that cash there, which might feel like earning 10% as an external benefit. You're not getting a higher return internally on the money market or the savings account, but you are getting a high return externally because you don't have to insure those small inconsequential things because you have cash,
which for many people is thousands a year,
right? So
in saving.
So then you don't have to feel like the money's burning a hole in your pocket. My dad used to say that when I would get an allowance or something, like, is that money burning a hole in your pocket because I want to go buy a thumb pop? Remember those ring pops? And he's like, well, you got to go buy it right now,
Fun dips.
right? Or fun dips. And he's probably thinking like, oh my God, imagine if this kid does a fun dip, he's going to be running around and then get grouchy and exhausted because it's going to be a sugar high.
And what's funny is I probably know the exact gas station that
Where Garrett
bought that from.
It was, I would ride my bike down the hill from Westwood, which is a place in Price, Utah, over to City Market.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you ever get Big League Chew?
Oh, for sure. But I tried to save it for the game.
I
tried to save it
for my brothers.
for baseball games. Like, okay, this is going to be awesome. Green
you're
M&Ms and
talking to
Big
two
League
people
Chew,
who've
those were
played
superstitions.
baseball, so yes,
Yeah.
Big League Chew is a thing. And then if you were,
I bought some for my kids not too long ago, and they're like, "This lost flavor too quick." I'm like, but it was amazingly epic for baseball, guys. You got to understand.
Okay, so I think we're good with people who are nearing retirement age, looking to cash out their 401ks.
And hopefully we entertain
give them
them
some
along
good
the way.
information. Yeah, I think we have a few laughs
All right.
with them.
Hey, are you worried about your 401k or IRA? Would you like to access the money without penalty and have a way to address the tax? Do you know about the new rules amidst COVID and you're not having a 10% penalty, or heard of something called a 72T distribution, which avoids the 10% penalty long term? See, these plans are only tax deferred, not tax free. Even the language inside of a Roth talks about tax deferral, and under certain conditions can be tax free. Those things can change. So how do you protect yourself and get access to your money? What's up?
Hey.
How's that intro?
That was fantastic.
Okay, good.
Yes. I didn't interrupt you. I didn't laugh in the middle. We're off to a great start.
You're a pro.
Yeah.
It's good.
I'm a pro. That's right.
You're a pro amateur.
A pro amateur. I can handle that.
I'm the same. Look, now you're laughing.
It's like, where do we go from here?
You ask the person's question.
Okay.
That's what we do on Ask the Mini
All
Nerds.
right. Well, good thing is we have one from Kathy.
Okay, cool.
And she says, I enjoyed the segment about cashing out your 401k. If one opts for a 72T election before 59 and a half, my understanding is that they can change their mind about it when they reach 59 and a half. Is this correct? I'll let you answer that, and then I'll go into the second part.
Okay, so 72T is a election on IRAs that says, I want to get to this money before 59 and a half. Now, amidst COVID, you don't even have to do that election. You can just get up to $100,000 without the 10% penalty. You could pay the tax this year, or you could pay it over the next 3 years.
You get to decide.
Yeah, it depends on what your income is going to be like and those types of things. A 72T says you're going to take cash flow that's substantially equal from your retirement plan for a minimum of 5 years or till 59 and a half, whichever is a longer period of time.
Okay.
So if Kathy was 58 and started this, she has to go for 5 years. So she's going to be in her 63 essentially before that stops.
Okay.
Even though she's past 59 and a half. So it's a minimum 5 years.
Yeah.
After that, you can definitely stop. So if you start at 52 and then at age 59 and a half, you want to stop, you can completely shut it down as far as taking that out at 59 and a half.
Okay. When is it a good situation to do the 72T?
when you want to get that money out of there without penalty and you want to create tax offsets along the way rather than taking the tax hit all at once when you pull it out. So
Okay.
I'll give some good strategies for that.
Okay. And then my other question was, with the current state of society and all of the COVID stuff.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, I know that's a loaded statement, but speaking of the
Are we talking
$100,000,
politically, religiously? Like, where could we get really offensive here, Stolva?
I would like to avoid any offensive conversation.
And yet we work together. That's the amazing thing.
Yeah, how did
it's
that
like,
happen?
yeah.
I'm always offending you, or you other way around?
I would, if you could offend me, that would be phenomenal.
I'm gonna try.
I'd like to see it.
Okay, I'm gonna try. That's my 2020 goal.
That'd be like
is to learn
me
how to
putting
offend
full
you.
effort into something and you'd be like, did you even work on that? that might be a little bit, that might get to me.
Okay, I'll make note of that. So the $100,000 that people can take out.
Yeah.
You're like, go for it. Get $100,000.
Kind of my feeling, but there's going to be tax on that still.
What's the tax on? What percentage are
Or
we talking?
depends on the person's tax bracket.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they're just going to pay whatever their taxes are. They could do it this year or over a 3-year period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just give them some cool ideas because there's a lot of IRS notices that have come out
Yep.
that might offset that.
Okay.
You know, I don't have a 401k, right? Or IRA.
Yeah, because I've heard this story maybe
Yeah.
50 times.
You know
that-
it. Oh, there we go.
that you
You're trying to
cashed it
offend
out.
me.
You
and
cashed
then what
it out,
I do?
and you planted grass in your yard, so you could always say that your 401k was growing.
How do you? I wasn't going to go
clever.
there. That wasn't going to be my. Okay, it was, but yeah. So I don't have one. And guess how much money I have in the stock market, Stolva?
0.
I feel good about it, even on good days of the stock market.
Yeah. You were at a workshop.
I'm just not participating in it.
Yeah. You were at a workshop, and when one of the biggest downturn happened and everyone was panicking and freaking out a bit about their money.
Someone was drinking alcohol with Valium.
Oh my.
I don't think you're
that's
supposed
really
to do
bad.
that together.
No, I don't. I'm pretty sure you're not. But you weren't worried because you weren't investing
I'm worried
in those
about
ways.
my investments in my businesses and the value that it creates, not in companies I have no control over, no knowledge about, that I probably don't even like, and helping them out or buying on a secondary market. Like when you invest in the stock market, it's in the secondary market. Doesn't that just sound like
Secondary?
like
I
you're
mean-
the? And I'm trying to think of an analogy not offensive, but don't you feel like the redheaded stepchild right there?
Oh my.
Is that a
I
bad
love
one? Is that a
redheads.
I know I found out my wife does too.
She has a crush on redheads.
Yeah. But
I don't
the
blame
way
her.
she describes this redhead, I feel like it's a unicorn. So I'm not feeling threatened. Like dark skin with auburn hair. I'm like dark skin and redhead. I haven't seen
The
tanning solution. What's going on?
spray
Anyway.
tan. That works.
Okay. Now what?
Okay, let's go to Kathy's second part of her question.
You're just thinking about
Before
redheads
we
and
go.
got all like caught up.
I know, there's
I don't
some
know what's
handsome
going
ones
on.
out
Let's just get
there.
to the questions here.
Okay, here we go. She said, would you explain the pros and cons of putting the 401k funds into an annuity and receiving payments? I am considering doing this while the market is up to lock in gains, get a contractual rate of return, and quote unquote, miss the inevitable market correction downturn.
Okay, so annuities inside of a retirement plan, one of the problems are you could be paying fees on the retirement plan and paying fees on the annuity. So that's one concern. So if you can go to like a self-directed that doesn't have much fee for the IRA structure. And then there's different types of annuities. There's fixed annuities, which right now are just paying so low of interest.
Okay.
And you're locking your money away. There's an immediate annuity that she might be looking at that 30 days later starts annuitizing and paying cash flow for the rest of your life. But you just got to measure how much cash flow is that? Is it worth tying my money up into that? Because a lot of people start using annuities. They were originally intended for not outliving your money, but then they just became accumulation vehicles. And there's a lot of these variable annuities that'll say, we'll guarantee a certain payout if you annuitize. But most people don't like annuitizing because now you're stuck with that's the payment for the rest of your life.
Got it.
So if you're like, well, I want the lump sum. Sorry, that's not available anymore. So a very small percentage of people actually annuitize. I think if you are going to annuitize, that might be the place an annuity makes sense. But what I've seen is with indexed annuities that say, okay, we're going to give you a minimum interest rate and participate in some upside of the market. They cap that really low. So you don't get a lot of upside on it anymore.
Yeah.
Used to be better years ago. And it's part of it how they design the policies.
Okay. That seems like a common theme.
Yeah, not getting too technical here, but there's something called a zero coupon bond. Just I'll give the basics of it. They're not all designed this way.
Explain that.
Zero coupon bond is I buy something now, and in the future it matures, and it's this amount. There's no interest paid along the way. It's just, boom, I get this at the end.
Okay.
So they might buy that, right? And that funds their guarantee, let's say. Then they use options on the market for the rest. So if the market goes up, because they're using leverage, they get more. If the market goes down, they lose more, but they got that zero coupon bond backing them up.
Okay.
So because interest rates have been so stinking low, they can't participate as much in the stock market as they want with the options trading.
Yeah.
So you just see where someone might only get a maximum of 7%, and there might be a year where the market does 20. You get cut off at 7. But you're getting no loss on the downside. Or there's other annuities that say, hey, we've given you all these guarantees if you annuitize. So you got to measure some of those things, right? There's a lot of catches and caveats. I think that they can be okay vehicles for people who are at retired ages and looking for cash flow. I think as an accumulation vehicle, we have to really understand the fees and the design. And there are some private annuities, and we've got people in our network that have analyzed annuities. It's nothing I get paid on or researched, but so I know a little bit, but I wouldn't call myself a comprehensive expert to keep up with them from time to time. There was a time where I felt like they were really good because I knew the market felt overvalued, but interest rates were such that you could get these to participate more. Yeah, I don't know. I hate having annuity fees inside of retirement plan fees. So if you can minimize the fees on both through a private annuity,
Okay.
or through a self-directed IRA that has just an annual fee versus a percentage fee, and then just know if you can handle the annuitization.
Okay. What?
You learned something right there, didn't you?
I did. A lot of that was new for me. And I'm just wondering, for people who are starting out, can you just describe and I guess give a definition of what an annuity is?
So, like life insurance is if you die prematurely, here's a lump sum of money.
Yeah.
Annuity is, what if you retired at age 60, but the market went up and down, and all of a sudden during the downturn, you run out of money? An annuity is the insurance for not outliving your money. So it would pay out until the day you die.
Okay.
So what if you live longer than expected? They're still making payments.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good to know.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So I talked about tax offsets in this. So ideally, you could create tax offsets to start slowly getting money out of a retirement plan because they're tax deferred. And my problem with tax deferred is I think we've been kind of lied to that, you'll be in a lower tax bracket in the future. Well, it's not good to have less money in the future because we're adding trillions of dollars to the economy, which means things are going to become eventually more expensive and could be more expensive in a major way. So the government's $23 trillion with that rising quickly in debt, just going right now into 2020, right?
That's frightening.
They're printing all that. So there's a lot of risk of tax going up. And if you just defer that tax, it could become problematic. So I'm saying, what if you start getting money out? Well, the IRS came out with some notices, one called the NOL rules, net operating loss, that if you've had higher years of income, you could take your higher years of expense and go back and apply that. So if you're a business owner and own the building, you could cost segregate it where you get accelerated depreciation for tax purpose.
Yeah, that sounds like a win.
R&D credits. Maybe you've built software or a website or an app. You can go and get credits if you did that in the United States to apply to to past times, right? So these are just two examples of how you could do that. Or, we watched a little comic special last night because I think Hassan Minhaj does a really good job explaining very complicated issues in a comedic way around finance. So we talked.
That was a good episode.
We're showing about donor advised funds, charitable trust, which we've talked about a lot. And, it isn't usually as much about charity as it is about not paying as much tax.
Right.
It does have a, tint of that for sure.
Yes.
You've got to have some of that. But those are other ways that you might be able to create some offset.
Hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And if you're enjoying these videos, well, there's good news. More where that came from. So go ahead and click through and watch the next video now.